it still was a big, significant, emotional win for Miami.
Like, if he knew that they could be good enough to beat Georgia and have a path to the national title, I don't think he gives up that job.
I got a weird feeling about this Oregon game.
I'm believing. It sounds like you are too.
Next week, when we talk, who are we going to be talking about playing for the national title?
They did not profile like a 10-win team. They profiled like 7-win type teams. I can't wait to let 18 to 22-year-olds emotionally ruin me.
I made a call, to Vegas. I said, look, we actually need the favorite here.
Welcome, everyone. Bruce and the Bear college football playoff semifinal are upon us. First game on Thursday in the Fiesta Bowl, Miami and Ole Miss, and then Friday in Atlanta, Oregon, and number 1 Indiana. Bruce, I miss you here right now at Camelback. Where are you, my man?
Man, that's good living, Bear. That's a lot better than the Delta Lounge when that guy was looking over your shoulder every 5 minutes when on that Friday. Wherever you were stuck, I'm happy for you. I'm living through you right now.
Well, no, we certainly miss you here. I ran into your colleague when I was checking in earlier, Stu Mandel, and he was joking about you and I. We should be getting a bonus for single-handedly getting Miami in the playoff. I don't know if we were ultimately the result of it, but
yeah, I would. I think the committee finally saw the light, Bear.
I think they did as well. So let's talk about the game Thursday night here in Tempe, Miami, or I shouldn't say Tempe, in Glendale now. Miami has never won the Fiesta Bowl, and they have had some of their worst performances and horror story of memories between Penn State 86 and Ohio State 2003. My final game as a student and student assistant in sports information at WVUM was the 29-0 game in the 1994 Fiesta Bowl to Chuck Levy and the Desert Swarm. So not a lot of positive memories for Miami here in the Fiesta Bowl, but the Canes are favored by 3.5 over Ole Miss. And what do you make of this Ole Miss deal? Like, with everything that's been going on this week, it seems like focusing on trying to get Trinidad Chambliss another year, signing Lacey, all the portal acquisitions. Does it seem like they may be focusing a little bit too much on next year? Not really worried. And almost like, I don't want to say it feels like they won their Super Bowl last week, but heard very little talk about the actual game from their camp.
Yeah, even some of the chatter's been on which Lane Kiffin assistant who he's hired at LSU are going to be with the team still. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's as I think earlier in the day, Pete Golding had said yes, that Joe Cox, the tight ends coach, and George McDonald, the receivers coach, they want to be coaching the game, but they're now LSU Tigers and they're not coming back. And so, look, the staffs are way bigger than they used to be. Certainly when those games you were talking about, from another era ago, there's plenty of guys around. But I think, to me, what's been fascinating is you could make the case, based off of last week's game for sure, that this team is playing better without Lane Kiffin than they were with them. Right? I mean, they didn't beat Georgia the first time. They did last time. My kind of analogy, Bear, I don't know if you buy it, is like it's that team where they have a really good player, maybe even a great player, gets hurt, and yet somehow the team ends up pushing through and everybody else raises their level a little bit more and they end up playing even better. Now, I don't know how long that's sustainable. Mm-hmm. Certainly we saw it to some version of this, at least in the basketball analogy of Steve Fisher in Michigan, when Bill Frieder left a long time ago. I don't know. I just know this. Trinidad Chambliss was phenomenal the other night against Georgia. Do you think Miami's defense has a much better pass rush than Georgia's? I mean, they got after both of their first two opponents in the playoff, and one of them is a really good runner. It's certainly at Texas A&M, maybe Julian Sands not. But how do you see this matchup playing out?
It does feel like that Chambliss is able to get rid of the ball a heck of a lot quicker than Sayin and even Reed. So that does concern me. I do think that there is reason to be concerned with this style of offense. But I will say, I think people are trying to compare Ole Miss to SMU when SMU beat Miami, but it wasn't because of anything really offensively that SMU did. Miami had the ball for almost 38 minutes. It was a situation where Miami turned the ball over twice, and they committed 12 penalties in the game for almost 100 yards. And that is something that a lot of my Miami associates, friends, supporters, whatever you want to call them, have been talking about. If you look at Miami in the playoff, 2 games, 4 penalties for 30 yards. Regular season, over 7.5 penalties per game, 63 yards a game in penalties. It's almost like that. You mentioned the NCAA tournament with Michigan and Bill Frieder and Steve Fisher. It's almost like you get out of your conference play and you get to the NCAA tournament and things are officiated a little bit differently. The officiating crews aren't like looking for certain things just from knowing your games over and over. So Miami, the way they've called these games so far, it's been a godsend for Miami, because during the regular season, they were one of the most penalized teams in the country. And now the officials seem to be letting a little bit more go.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The other day, you certainly saw that against Ohio State. I think there was maybe a play, I want to say, against Texas A&M where it would look like it was going to be a late hit, roughing the passer deal.
We were all waiting for it. We were all waiting for the flag.
And that had been something that had been an issue against Miami a couple of times in key games, even last year, not just this year, where it was just not being really disciplined or buttoned up. The thing that has stood out to me beyond that also is these guys tackle really well in space. I'll be honest, I watched a decent amount of Miami this year. I knew Keontae Scott was good, but until I talked to some coaches who played Miami earlier in the year before he got hurt, I didn't know that people thought he was that good. And he has been a difference maker back there. But they tackle really well in space. Marcel Reed is a super dynamic runner. And I thought they did a really good job of not, maybe Marcel Reed gained 12 yards or 8 yards. He didn't gain 40. He didn't gain 65. And that team had really good skill talent. And I know it was a really windy day, but I thought that was impressive. And obviously Ohio State has the best receivers in the country, and they have a lot of weapons. And what it feels like, to get back to the penalty part, is this is a pretty mature team. You have it. Look, Mario Cristobal's first big recruiting class there when he really got settled. 4 top 100 recruits that were the headliners. CeCe Mauinoa, who's been their best offensive lineman and played at an extremely high level. Mark Fletcher, who's the 4th of those guys, who's been fantastic. He ran all over A&M, and I thought he was really good last week. Ruben Bain has been arguably the best defensive player in the country, and then the other one is Samson Okolona, who's been up and down, getting settled, but now he's playing probably the best of his career, and he's sharing a job at one of the guard spots. And I think those guys have seen everything from the rebuild, and I think they are tone setters. And you see it, I think, even when, even if Malachi Tony's not breaking big plays, he's 185 pounds and throwing big blocks. And you see all these other guys who are really experienced, I think, who are playing at a really high level. Doesn't mean they're gonna bully Ole Miss, because I think Ole Miss is playing with a lot of confidence. But this is the best Miami we've seen in a long time.
It certainly is. And one other angle, kind of with the coaching staff, with Ole Miss and Pete Golding saying that we would love to have, they want to, but they don't know, and they're at LSU now. Do you think maybe this could be the game where it kind of shows a little bit? You mentioned how great they played in the playoffs so far, but it's always a but, right, Bruce? But there were 2 rematches. They played Tulane in the regular season. They played Georgia in the regular season. For the most part, the scouting, the game planning, the scheming, the hay was kind of in the barn. They kind of had all, they knew what they were doing. Maybe there were some tweaks here or there, little adjustments, but all of the prep had been done during the regular season. It wasn't like Tulane is going to go there and compete anyway. Now you've got to start from scratch with the skeleton staff against Miami and all the different looks that they can give you defensively. And you have to try and figure out a way how to stop that running game and block that front four. So is there a chance maybe this could be the day where we maybe see a little bit of a crack in Ole Miss? I
mean, it's certainly possible. I mean, I've been really impressed by what we've seen. I think this day and age where the staff's are so big, even losing a couple of assistants, I think is manageable. And it's the receiver coach and the tight ends coach. It's not the offensive coordinator. It's not the defensive coordinator. So I think that helps them, and they have big staffs. But just the emotional toll of all of this. That's what I wondered about with Ole Miss, is just they have been this soap opera through no fault of their own. I mean, it's more of a Lane Kiffin thing and more than anything else. But, I feel like it's galvanized them. But that's a long thing to pull off. Even if, let's say they beat Miami, and whether they get Indiana or they get Oregon, I just feel like, that is a long road and emotional roller coaster for them to be on. I just think it's impressive that they were able to finish it out the way they did. I'm interested to see how they respond. We know Miami is going to try to be the more physical team. Does that end up presenting a new set of problems? Will this team be fatigued? I don't know. I mean, they're very talented too, and they have a really good running back in Kewan Lacey. I don't know. I just think it's a really fascinating storyline coming out of Oxford right now.
On the flip with Miami, we talk about their physicality and their emotion. They were in a physical game at College Station, overcoming the 12th man there at Kyle Field, and ultimately coming up with a pick in the end zone to win that game. Then you got to come back and you knock off Ohio State in another massively physical game where you own the line. I love all this talk from like the Ohio State players about, if we played 10 times, we know what would have happened the other 9. They getting different players on the offensive and defensive line that were going to change that game. But that being said, it still was a big, significant emotional win for Miami, and they put in a ton of physical exertion. Maybe we could see a little bit of a lethargic, slow start. It would surprise me, but the possibility is certainly there, no?
It would surprise me a little bit too. I mean, I think it was key that they're probably getting Ahmad Moten back. Yes. When he got it looked like he almost got I don't think it was a chop block, but he was engaged, and all of a sudden you watch somebody roll into his leg, and he's a really key guy. I know David Blay is a experienced defensive tackle too, who jumped in. But that's a key piece, especially against a really good running team. And I think that I don't know if this is a subplot or not with Miami, but you have, and a lot of these guys have been around. Michael Irvin's been around. Ray Lewis has been around. They've been around. It wasn't just like they just popped in when all of a sudden the rules.
We're back. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious how, if that plays any role in it. I don't, when you said the thing about the Fiesta Bowl, I forgot about the Arizona game, when that happened, because it's so long ago. I obviously remember, as soon as you said Fiesta Bowl, I thought about Vinny Testaverde and the Penn State game. And I was at, like you, I was at the Ohio State game. I don't think that plays into anybody's heads at Miami, other than the people who are our age or, right. Some of that. But, it's one of those things where if Miami does get off to a slow start, I'm sure outside the field, there's going to be that chatter of Miami has a jinx in Arizona.
Different stadium, obviously, now, but still same bowl game. Do you think if Lane Kiffin in his heart truly felt Ole Miss could have a chance at getting to or winning the national championship this year, he would have left when and in the fashion that he did?
Could or would. If he thought they had a really good chance to win it, I don't think he leaves. I really don't. I don't know how you could leave a team like that. Because think about it this way, Bear. In modern times, they've never won a national title. They can claim some from the early 60s and late 50s, but they've never won a national title. And if Lane Kiffin led them to a national title, I think that is a legacy play for him. Let's say 2 years from now, he leads LSU to a national title. That's great, and they'll celebrate it. But Ed Ogeron won one there and went 15-0. Les Miles won one. Nick Saban won one. The only one who didn't was Brian Kelly. If you do it at Ole Miss, and again, if he knew that they could be good enough to beat Georgia and have a path to the national title, I don't think he gives up that job. I really don't. Because everything he had said was how happy he is, how happy his family is, unless that was all BS.
Right.
I think it was like the LSU job is different. Yeah, at Ole Miss, you can get to the playoff. At LSU, you can win them. Well, maybe he could have, maybe, who knows? We'll see how this is going to play out. But I don't think if he was being honest, he would go, no, I saw this coming.
Yeah, and that's what's like in the back of my head. I keep thinking that, and now there's no way if he thought that they were this good, he would have passed up an opportunity to play for a national night. I don't know. Maybe it's something. Maybe it's nothing. We'll see if we'll see if the Ole Miss defense can slow that Miami running game down, because I do think you're going to see a lot of bully ball on Thursday night, and Miami really trying to help their defense out by maintaining time and possession and establishing the line of scrimmage. So that's why I've taken some incoming this week, Bruce, because I've said I think if both teams play their best game, I think Miami will win. And ultimately what I mean, the biggest thing is if Miami plays their best game, that means they are dominating at the line of scrimmage and owning it on both sides of the ball, which means they are running and they are getting to Chambliss and forcing him to throw a little bit quicker and creating problems. So everything else kind of branches out from the line of scrimmage. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Bear. In the other game, Indiana, a 3.5-point favorite in the rematch against Oregon. I think you like Coach Cignetti's guys in part because this is good logic to me, because they don't do dumb stuff, to quote you, I believe.
Exactly.
And, man, I was at the Rose Bowl last week, and they absolutely annihilated Alabama. Now, this was not a great Alabama team, but it was a capable Alabama team, and this was a no contest. And I feel like Indiana is getting better and better. Like when they beat Oregon at Autzen, it was impressive, but I didn't see it coming. They sacked Dante Moore 6 times. He'd have been only sacked 1 time, I think, in the first 5 games combined. Mendoza throws a pick 6, and he bounces back, and they win the game, and they hold Oregon to 1 offensive touchdown. And talking to people at Indiana last week, one of the things that came up a lot is, this is why we're better this year than last year. Yeah, in the details, they're better on the offensive line, much better than they were. And Mendoza has been an upgrade from a good quarterback to an outstanding quarterback now that they have. But it's the mindset, right? When they played Ohio State last year, you and I were both there. They started out okay, and then they just kind of got pushed around and just kind of melted down, and Ohio State was clearly better. They told me they felt like last year they knew they were the underdog, and they're just, it was hard for them to believe they were the better team. They didn't look great against Notre Dame either in the first round of the playoff. Now, this team has a way different mindset. We're going to kick people's butts. We're better than them. We're going to execute better. We're going to be more physical, all those things. And that's what it looks like. I mean, I'm believing. It sounds like you are too.
Yeah, I am. To echo on what you were saying about quoting bad loses more than good wins, and they don't do dumb stuff. Second fewest penalty yards in the game, lead the nation in turnover margin, just 8 turnovers all year. Third in the nation in third down defense, lead in third down offense. You extend drives, you get teams off the field, you don't turn the ball over, you don't put yourself behind the sticks with dumb penalties, you're going to put yourself in a pretty good position to win. Let me ask you this about the Rose Bowl win against Alabama. Yes, it was a thoroughly dominating and convincing win, and it almost looked like Alabama just tapped out and quit on the game. However, I think it's still it's the mental part of trying to understand it was at what Indiana did to Alabama in the fashion that they did. You do need to realize, though, going into Selection Day, we'd been talking for a month about how Alabama was not playing great. They didn't look good. The offensive line was terrible. And oh, by the way, Florida State absolutely embarrassed them as well in the opening game of the year. So, give Indiana all of the flowers, all the credit in the world for what they did. But is it bordering maybe on a little bit over the top and not really understanding that it's not a vintage Alabama team?
Yeah, I mean, look, they were down 17-0 in the first round of the playoff to Oklahoma. The Oklahoma punter drops it. The Oklahoma kicker is really good. It was almost everything that could have gone wrong for the Sooners did. In some ways, I feel like Alabama looked more impressive in the game they lost at home to Oklahoma than in the game they won, where it really felt like Oklahoma imploded, right? And so this is a team, as you said, wouldn't run the football. They were not very good on defense. They were okay on defense at times. And then when they this has been the MO really for like a year and a half when they were not at home. If they got kind of pushed around, they tapped out, it seemed like. They certainly did against the Seminoles in Tallahassee, and that wasn't a good team. So all those things are true. I still am a big believer in Indiana. It wouldn't shock me if Oregon would beat them, right? I don't know. I watched the Texas Tech game. I think this is a good Oregon team with a really good D-line. They are really banged up in the backfield, though.
They are.
I mean, they have two healthy running backs. I mean, I wouldn't say if Jeff Schwartz had eligibility, they would line him up because
they might.
That wouldn't look great. But they are that hobbled. Now, the two running backs they have are talented, but man, do you think that will be a big issue for the Ducks?
I think it will, because one of the reasons, one of the expectations I had in this game was that Will Stein was going to run the ball a little bit more. You look at the first meeting, the running backs had 16 carries for 103 yards of the game. It was all the sack yardage on Dante Moore that made the running numbers not look that great. But I thought that their ability to potentially run the ball with those guys would really maybe wear down an Indiana defense that doesn't have Daly and doesn't have Wyatt, who had a great game at Autzen earlier in the year. I just wonder, though, like you look at the second half, everything that kind of went wrong in that game for them. Second half, they couldn't do anything on offense. The drive chart was embarrassing. But there they are after that pick six. It's 2020, and I think everyone in the building outside of the Indiana sideline was like, okay, Oregon's going to ultimately get a stop, pull this thing out. Like, would you rather be the team, macro picture, like, would you rather be the team that won the first meeting or the team that lost the first meeting? Like, I don't want to lead you, but I'll answer for myself first. Like, I would almost rather be the team that lost, because I think you have more ways to maybe think you can improve and do things differently. Whereas if you won, maybe you kind of played your best game and you threw everything out there that you had. So we'll see. I don't know what you think on that.
I think for me, it's the opposite. I think because winning that game was so big for Indiana, it was the first time we're like, oh, we're an underdog this year, but we're not that team that got beat handily by Notre Dame or got whipped by Ohio State. We're different this year. And I think that's just kept on fueling them. The other thing that's a little bit of a wrinkle on this is a part of the playoff where you have two coordinators at Oregon, Will Stein on offense, Tosh Lupoy on defense. Those guys have other jobs. They're not assistant coaches. They're running Power 4 programs. Lupoy's at Cal and Stein's at Kentucky. And it's different than the last round because the portal has been officially open. There's a lot of stuff moving on. I mean, Lupoy just got Adam Muhammad, a good running back from Washington. And obviously Will Stein has been pulling guys, we'll get to some more of this portal news, but I do think there's a little more of a distraction factor for the coordinators. Again, they're not position coaches. And I think that's a significant thing, especially on the offensive side, because yes, Dan Lanning was the old defensive coordinator, but I think it's different when it was your thing, as opposed to he wasn't an offensive coordinator now. And I think that could be a little bit of a challenge for the Ducks.
Well, let's kind of transfer to the portal talk. It is interesting. I don't know if there's anything to read between the lines or not on this, but you've had Ole Miss and Indiana super active in the portal, yet you haven't really seen anything from Miami or Oregon other than guys leave. Did you draw any conclusions to that, or is it just how things have kind of gone?
Yeah, it is interesting because in one case, I know mid-season or so, I talked to some people close to Dante Moore, and they said the intention was that he was going to stay because they felt like it was just better for his development to get more starts. Really, this is his first full year as a starter. Now he could be a top 5 pick, and financially that could be a really good thing, obviously, for him. But there's a couple of things that go with it. Is it better long-term for him to get another season at Oregon? Also, if he stays, we're probably talking about a $5 or $6 million quarterback. It's not like he's going to be hurting for money. And I don't know if you want to go be the Jets quarterback, because that hadn't worked out pretty good So there's that. On the Miami side, it's interesting because I know there's people inside Miami who do like Emory Williams. He didn't look great when they played a good Iowa State defense in the second half last year after Cam Ward went out of the game. But I know there's people there who think pretty highly of him. But Miami has been aggressive in the portal. We saw it obviously getting Ward. We saw it obviously getting Carson Beck. Mario has been really, really shrewd about the additions he would bring in. So a lot of stuff going on there. I mean, but it has been crazy, Bear. I feel like every day turns out to be, I can't believe how crazy this has gotten, and it kind of tops the last day.
And so the craziness has really taken place in the last 24 hours or so, maybe even less, with the Damon Williams story, with him saying he wants out of Washington, and whether it's LSU, whether it's somewhere else that maybe is reaching out to him, who knows? But this is it's kind of gotten ugly, isn't it?
It has. So, we were told that, probably around, late afternoon, Damon Williams told some Washington coaches that he was intending on leaving and he was going in the portal, which blew their minds because 4 days earlier, he had signed a contract with them that he said he was coming back, signed a contract with them. That's the craziest part. It wasn't like he had told them. There was a signed contract, I believe, on January 2nd. And I think he was going to get paid, upwards of $4+ million for that. And then the other crazy thing, and there's a bunch of like little crazy details in this, is he and Jedd Fisch have the same agent. The same agent. It's not like they're at the same agency. Doug Hendrickson represents both of them. Now, my understanding is that this was not Doug Hendrickson negotiating an exit for Damon Williams away to another school, that this was somebody in Williams's camp, because it just didn't make sense that an agent would kind of, really screw over his coaching client in this way, because it really puts Washington in a bind. Because yes, the portal's been open for 5 or 6 days, but if you just started looking for quarterbacks on January 2nd when it opened, you'd be way behind, because a lot of those deals and a lot of those wheels were already put in motion. So now here we are. Ole Miss, which is the school, LSU, which is a school a lot of people think that has been talking to Damon Williams, and Lane Kiffin. By the way, before Williams committed to play for Jedd Fisch at Arizona, before he moved, but they both moved to Washington, he was committed to Ole Miss. He was committed to Ole Miss for like 6 months with Lane Kiffin, and then obviously decommitted, and then eventually signed with Arizona. The other, it's just the other crazy part of this now is about 18 hours later, Bo Pribula, the former Missouri quarterback, is on Washington's campus visiting. So the Huskies have tried to pivot fast to try to find a plan B, because I think their heads are spinning right now that there's not going to be a Damon Williams for them.
Does that indicate to you that they're just going to throw in the towel on Williams and say, good riddance, whatever, go? Or do you think this is going to head down to there will be lawyers?
I think there's going to be bad riddance. I think, right from what I understand, as part of the contract that Williams signed, that there will be some kind of punishment financially. And what that could mean, I think it's the way the contract was written, it's basically at the discretion of Washington. And now I don't think they can say, okay, you owe us $50 million, but that's going to have to be determined in a court. But I don't think they're just going to say, hey, we know bad things happen in the portal, good luck to you. I don't think it's going to be that. I think they're going to look for significant financial compensation. They also may try to prove, if they have documentation that can back it up, that Williams was tampered with. And I know the Big Ten is supporting them. I know initially a lot of people were like, maybe this is the Oregon plan B, but I don't think that makes sense, because Oregon, like Washington, is a Big Ten conference school, and the Big Ten is already really rallying to Washington's support. I just couldn't imagine that Oregon would be on the other side of that.
Yeah, I'm with you on Oregon and Dante Moore. I think he's coming back, and I think Jeff Schwartz the other day was talking about, I think he believes he's coming back, and when he has less than 15 starts in his career. And
you can make a lot of money at Oregon still.
You can. And you don't got to get drafted second overall by the Jets and go to an absolute NFL wasteland. But if more were to leave. Like Sam Leavitt is another guy in the portal.
It's an Oregon native, right?
Oregon native. And it's odd, Bruce, because you don't know what you want to believe, but you hear it doesn't sound like Arizona State has kind of done him any favors in the portal when people have asked about him. I think there's a little bit of a reputation that he has in terms of what people I think basically saying he's a bad guy, which I hate throwing that out there, but like it sounds like he maybe rubs people the wrong way. Who the hell knows? But he is still out there, and he's probably the best guy out there right now in the portal. No.
Yeah, he's probably the most talented, in terms of Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati was a guy that a lot of the coaches I talked to thought was the highest thought of guy in the portal among quarterbacks. He's a big guy who can run. He's a willing runner, and he's accurate. Now he struggled. His teams did not do well in the month of November, but I think that was more on the teams as much as him. But Leavitt can really run. He's not quite as big as Sorsby. He's probably not quite as accurate, but he's a guy who helped Arizona go to the playoff and have a great turnaround. The Oregon piece of it would be interesting. Just that, Kenny Dillingham and Dan Lanning are really close. The idea, if there's any kind of not, great sentiment, I'm sure that would get back to the folks in Eugene if it was going to be that way. But what's really also another wild turn of this is he's visiting Baton Rouge at a basketball game sitting next to Lane Kiffin when the Damon Williams news comes out. I would have loved to have known the conversation or the thought bubbles in Lane Kiffin's head and Leavitt's head when that started to break, and everybody's like, well, Lane Kiffin's got this. And then all of a sudden you're the quarterback on that visit. And I know he's, was supposed to go to Tennessee from, shortly thereafter, but still, that's the portal in a nutshell right there.
It's a great cover by Lane. All along, you're working behind the scenes for Damon Williams, and publicly you're out there with Sam. I didn't me. It wasn't me. Clearly, a name that I haven't heard much about, but came into his career with so much hype out of high school was RAIOLA. And he's out there. What's the word with? Is there anything that you've heard about where he may wind up? Because Nebraska thought they had their quarterback, and then they didn't.
Yeah, from some of the coaches I talked to that were also doing evaluations, they thought he was a clear notch below Josh Hoover, who's getting around $5 million to go to Indiana, the former TCU quarterback, Sorsby. Leavitt as well. The kind of the biggest knock on RAIOLA is they just don't think he moves very well, and he can't really create. He's a big guy who has a good arm. Played a year and a half at Nebraska, didn't have great talent around him last year. Was a little up and down before he got hurt. But I think there was the mobility questions. I think were, I think he will end up somewhere, and I'm guessing he gets somewhere in the second tier money, because it seems like the top level quarterbacks are going for $4 to $5 million. And that next level of like the Lincoln Keenholz, the Ohio State backup, are in the, like somewhere the $2 to the $3 million range. My hunch is that at some point that's where RAIOLA ends up.
Everyone's 2025 breakout star, DJ Lagway, didn't exactly pan out that way. And he is in the portal looking for a new school. It seems like he is going to wind up somewhere not at the caliber of program of Florida. Like Virginia is a place that I've seen him connected with.
Yeah, and there's a few other like Big 12 schools that you hear his name at one point. I'd heard his name at Baylor. At one point, I heard his name at Missouri. I feel like people have kind of kicked the tires on him a little bit. He's got a lot of physical tools. He was up and down because he's a young quarterback. I think it'll be interesting to see. Some school is going to take a guy like this who has a lot of physical talent, and you could see it. It's either going to be a boom or a bust right now with him. And yeah, I think it was tough because a lot of ways you talk to coaches who know Billy Napier well, and they were like, he was comfortable winning a game 13-10 if it had, and whatnot. And then it felt like he had to be the savior this past year, and that didn't obviously happen. He's an interesting one, because I feel like there's people who say there's some they wonder, I think, a little bit about just the consistency piece of it. And most of the time, and I obviously Louisville really didn't do this with Keenholz because he was a guy who really hasn't played. But it's you think about guys like this who are like the former Elite 11 guys, whether it was Devin Brown, who also was an Ohio State guy before he went to Cal. It's like, I think they want to see somebody who's done it rather than, oh man, this guy has a big arm. He's, 6'3", 245. He could be special, but he wasn't special there. And I think it's a safer bet for them to go on the production. If it's that higher ceiling, lower floor guy, then I think honestly Lagway fits into the other category of people.
There's one other name out there, and that's Ty Simpson. He said he informed his Alabama coaching staff that he's going to the NFL. I will throw this out there as well. I know nothing other than
something. I know
nothing other than there's a team in the college football semifinal that is going to need a quarterback that we talked about earlier in the show. Cam Ward was going to the NFL. Carson Beck was going to the NFL. Ty Simpson is going to the NFL.
I don't know. I think, he's played less than both of them. Right? Cam Ward played a ton of football. A bunch of it was at Incarnate Word, and a lot of it was in Pullman. But he went from 5th round to first pick in the draft. And Carson Beck, I don't know where he's going to get drafted. He's played pretty well. We'll see what the final chapter is going to be on him. If he plays really well again, this round, and then they make it to the national title game and he plays well, then there's enough there to say it wouldn't shock me if he was a first-round quarterback. A lot of people I talked to 2 years ago thought he could be a first-round quarterback. Really smart, good size. He's actually made a couple of plays with his legs when it mattered. He certainly did in Ohio State. It wouldn't shock me if he ended up playing his way into the first round. Ty Simpson is probably a better runner than both of them. I mean, Cam Ward can really run too, but I think he's close to that. And he's got a really good arm. He's a little bit in the playing, has played about as much as Dante Moore. He's older than Dante Moore, though. It wouldn't shock me if he rethought it and somebody said, okay, what's the grade you're getting? Now, if he's getting a 2nd round grade, I could see him saying, I'm going to take my chances and throw for people. And I think I could work my way into the first round. And if I work my way into the first round, I'd probably get into with a better team than the Jets or situation than the Jets.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see what the opportunities are. But I think he's really good. There's a lot of times where people talk up other guys and I'm like, he's good, but he fumbles the ball a bunch or he's whatever. I think Ty Simpson's really, really good. And I know he had some up and down moments, but he also did not have a running game with him at all. And Ryan Williams had a rough year. He had, lost some confidence, I think. But I think Ty Simpson is really talented. I would, if somebody got him in the portal, that would be a huge get to me.
All right. Next week, when we talk, who are we going to be talking about playing for the national title?
If I had to guess, and I'm guessing it's Indiana against Miami.
I do think Miami will win. I am, as I said, much more nervous about this game than I was Ohio State.
Because you didn't think because it was house money for them to beat Ohio State. You thought they were going to beat Ohio State?
I felt really good about the matchup with Ohio State. Remember when the year started, we were talking and heading into October, it was like, who's better, Miami or Ohio State? Like they were 1 and 2. And that was the conversation. And you looked at Ohio State's schedule and you went down and you're like, the only team close to the defensive talent that they played that Miami has is Indiana. And Indiana kind of beat them up. So I felt really good about Miami's chances to win this game. But now you're favored. You pulled the upset. Everybody's kind of, I don't want to say penciling you in, but I think that people's eyes are open again. Like, oh, wow, Miami really is that good. And you're hearing a lot of noise or something. That worries me. I don't think it has anything to do with anything that's going on in the heck. Because look, if you would have told Mario Cristobal and anyone in that building before the year started that you got to beat Ole Miss to have a chance to play in your home stadium to win a national championship, to a man, they would have taken that. Oh, sign me up. That's not saying Ole Miss can't beat them and Ole Miss can't win and Ole Miss isn't good. But if that was like, okay, you don't have to play, you don't got to play Oregon, you don't got to play Alabama, you don't got to play Georgia, you don't got to play Ohio State, whomever. You got to play Ole Miss. Like they would have taken that. I got a weird feeling about this Oregon game. I don't know why, but I think Oregon gets revenge. I think we're going to see Oregon, Miami.
Wow.
The Mario Bowl.
Wow.
How about that?
Okay, that would be something.
Be a good week of build up, and if that happens, we'll certainly have a lot to talk about. Even if it's Indiana or Miami, any combination of these game teams. I think Indiana, Ole Miss, who I think would be like the public sentiment bowl. Like I think people would love to see Ole Miss complete the run and win it, and then you got Indiana on the other hand going from the worst program ever to potentially win a national championship. All I know is this: Miami will not be the team that anybody's going to be rooting for, regardless of whether they play Indiana or Oregon. And I think they're just fine with that, even though it would be on their home stadium. But
yeah. All right. Can't wait to see how this plays out, Bear.
Yeah, should be a fun Thursday and a fun Friday too. Hotly competitive games. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. Rate, review, subscribe. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Remember, less you bet, more you lose when you win.